Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. I am Josh with my co host, Luis.
Hello, hello, hello.
And welcome to this, the first episode of Battle Chads in the year of 2025. We're with a very special guest. And the reason he's a very special guest, because this is the singer to the band who provided us with the intro song to Battle Chads and fundamentally the outro song. Nick Lote, how are you?
No, I'm very happy to be here. I'm good, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's very exciting to be on the podcast, and it's sort of, I feel like in a way your listeners will already know me because they've been hearing my music a lot if they've been listening to all the episodes, which hopefully they have been. So it's quite it's good to be on in a different capacity as well.
And obviously, those listeners who were patrons of Fanboy 3 in Manchester, Huddersfield, gamers, etc., will probably obviously know who you are because, we'll talk about your Magic escalades back when you were heavily into it. But I'm sure a lot of those players will know who you are. And so, Luis, how was your Christmas, mate? How was your New Year? Did you have a good one?
I had a nice, lovely time. Feeling pretty good. Had some wonderful presents. The girlfriend got me a bunch of deck sleeves and all that kind of jazz, magic goodies. And had just a lovely time. Ready for the New Year's now happening. Ready for the Prague coming up in January towards the end of it. Yeah. Feeling good. Had a nice holiday season, nice and relaxed. Ready to take on the world now. Turning 30 this month as well. So exciting.
Welcome to the 30s. Look out for those knees, mate. My knees and my back are going already.
Oh, look at the size of me. My knees are well gone.
Same question. You, Nick, have a good Christmas.
In terms of joints going, it's my elbow is the one that trolls me the most these days. The right elbow is kind of seizing up from all the tennis. But my Christmas was really quiet actually, but in a nice way.
Yeah,
feel quiet. Makes me appreciate getting to chat to people all the more actually. So it's probably a good time to be on the podcast.
Aye, and this is quite a unique subject, particularly when we're thinking about Luis. Quite a few members of our team, Chad Magic team, are qualified for Prague, and there's been a lot of emphasis on practicing. There's been a massive meta shift in Modern, which is the format for Prague, and that means there's a lot of stress the team has put on itself because of how's the meta shaping. I know we have the meta sort of like settling down now, but what decks are we going to build? There's no clear obvious best deck currently, I'd say. I mean, people say Frog, people say Mardu, Energy, etc. But you've got the new decks that are coming around. You've got the Rhinos making a massive resurgence, etc. So this podcast, we're going to talk about preparing for major tournaments and preparing for yourself in the Magic space by looking after yourself mentally.
Absolutely.
Now the idea of this, I guess we've been trying to do something like this for a while, and it was trying to find the right guest, which Nick is. We'll go into why in a second, but it sort of came from the influence from Reed Duke made a. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about it in a second, but it was Reed put out a short quite a while ago from the recording this about Magic. You should take breaks. You should look after your mental health, and Magic should be fun. And we're going to sort of do a little bit of a dive into that subject now. Nick, before we move on, can you just tell us a little bit about your Magic history? Sort of, why because you are a very let's say charismatic person. Your band is a very charismatic band, but what was your connection with Magic and sort of your achievements within the game?
So Magic was a really big part of my life for a lot of it actually. I mean, I sort of played on and off, I guess, from 1998 onwards because I'm kind of old. But I mean, I got really into it just, I suppose, a couple of years before I first met you, Josh. That was actually when, I don't know, I guess my life was in quite a stable sort of state otherwise, and I was like, well, what am I enjoying most? And I just started playing loads more Magic, and then I guess the sort of competitiveness kind of kicked in, and I was like, well, okay, let's see, like, how good can I get at this game if I play it more, and yeah, so I guess I got to meet lots of people all over the place. Played. think I won. I think I won like 7 PPTQs, and I reached. Oh, I got to the playoff stage in the RPTQ, so I was basically one match from making it to the Pro Tour, which would have been pretty awesome. So, and I think one year I finished 8th in the country on like planes on the, well, when I say the country, in England, on like Planeswalker points. So yeah, for a while I was doing pretty well, and then I sort of. Standard was always my favorite format though, and and Magic has always evolved a little bit, and I don't know. I don't really want to be one of those people who's like, oh, it was better back in my day or whatever. But it got a lot more combo-y. I guess in the year or two leading up to the pandemic, and then that trend has generally continued, I think, and it's certainly not as mid-range dominated as it used to be, and I don't like it quite as much. So I don't know. I haven't since the pandemic. I've never got quite back into it to the same extent. But I don't want to like spoil anyone else's enjoyment. There's clearly plenty of people enjoying it in its format as it is now. There are plenty of other formats as well. Obviously, I still really enjoy Limited, and I guess so. Even though I don't really consider myself a particularly hardcore Magic player these days, it's a game that I'm very, very fond of because it's just been such a big part of my life, and it has given me loads of really, really good moments as well.
Did you know you were actually one of the big competitors I had back in the day? I don't know if you remember when I was on my good old Sarkhan Dinosaurs deck with the Sarkhans Unsealing, where you would give me a beating playing your mono red just go fast and punch face deck. And I was over here trying to play my Llanowar Elf into my Steel Leaf Champion. That was the only hope I had to try and defeat you. Otherwise, I was like, here's my 4-mana enchantment. Oh, wait, I'm dead. Great. Sick.
Well, yeah. I really enjoyed playing those red decks, actually. I loved how mathematical they were, and how, and you get lots of combat maths, which I realized was one of my relative strengths within the game. So no, I do. You were very new back then, though, weren't you?
Very, very new. I had no idea what I was doing.
But also, or another way of looking at it is that because you weren't terrible then, but your game's just come on so much since.
I've learned a lot more about how to swing cards correctly and not die to mono red instantly. It's been quite a path to get there, but done pretty well.
I'm waiting for the moment when Luis says to me that you're not terrible. That'd be quite a compliment.
That's never happening, Josh.
So I'm not. This pod isn't going to be about standard.
That ties quite nicely into the topic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I would say that standard at the moment, Nick. If you do want to get back into it, there is a very, very competitive red deck. And also it is actually quite mid-rangey as well. So standard is really good at the moment. And there is a combo deck too. For the listeners, if you want to know about the standard combo deck Otters, we did do a deck tech about it not long ago. So go check that out. But Nick, so
we played against it on Arena, but
yes. So today's topic, we're going to talk about mainly sort of the mental side of the game and the mental preparations and how you can really look after your mental state. So why have we asked you particularly to come on? So what is your occupation? Can you tell me about what you do for a living?
So in my day job, I work as a councillor for the Children's Society. So I'm basically trying to sort of play my part in tackling the adolescent mental health crisis at the moment. And I absolutely love that, doing that work. It certainly has some really, really good moments, and it's incredibly interesting as well. And I guess it's quite the Venn diagram of people who play Magic and qualified counsellors. It's a very small intersection, but I'm in there. So it does mean I'm quite well qualified to talk about this particular topic, which so hopefully I'll be able to offer some useful information and
some insight.
Hopefully. Yes.
So Nick, can we just talk about just general mental health? Like, why is it important? Because obviously, a lot of people around this time of year, it's like, go to the gym, look after yourself. You've eaten. I'm probably right now 40% Stilton and 20% port. So I've had a lot of eating and drinking over Christmas, and there's this massive thing on keeping fit and look after yourself, etc., etc., etc. But why is general mental health from a council sort of perspective like really, really important, and arguably just as important as looking after yourself, say physically?
I think, well, it's actually very, very closely connected to physical health in so many ways. Generally, when people's mental health deteriorates, so does the physical health, and vice versa. I think, I suppose the way our overall mental and emotional well-being, it's the thing that helps us cope with what life throws at us in day-to-day life. It's being in the right place allows us to focus on things. It allows us to just enjoy life, and I guess it's, I don't know. Without it, there isn't really that same incentive to keep going and try and do things with our lives. We've kind of, we have to try and, in some ways, I think it always ties into a bit of existential philosophy, like how we what we see as our purpose in lives, or the purpose that we create for ourselves, and if we feel like we're doing something worthwhile and generally making some kind of progress towards this thing that feels worthwhile, that can help carry us through a lot of the challenges life throws our way.
Absolutely, yeah. I can fully appreciate that. There's it's one of those things that you really want to find a purpose. You really want to find something that you enjoy, and a lot of the times, whether you think of it as art or as a creative outlet or not, it tends to be, because that's how we innately are as people. We go to these outlets in whatever shape or form that they take, and we make use of them because that's what makes us enjoy life. Some of us like brewing, having a fun time with the deck building, doing those kind of things in Magic. Some of us just like swinging rhinos, turning them sideways and going face. Josh,
yeah, buddy.
And it's just it's those kind of things that really give us joy and keep us moving forward.
And so there Magic is also. I was going to say, the game, it has this natural kind of excitement to it, doesn't it? Because it's sort of, it's unpredictable. It gives us that sort of, if our day-to-day lives are in quite a mundane place, it kind of gives us it gives us that bit of an adrenaline rush and kind of makes us feel alive a bit.
And I think that's a really good segue to move on from like the general mental health well-being and link it to Magic, because you see a lot of you say about the purpose, and you see a lot of identity, and I feel like there's a stress on people, particularly within the game of Magic, that their performance and their prowess at Magic sort of correlates to their almost identity and who they are as a person. Like, if I'm not succeeding at Magic, then I'm not being myself, or I'm not projecting myself properly, and therefore I'm hard on myself, and I'm going to get burnt out, etc. And I think what you said right about the unpredictability of the game, you can't. There's only so much you can control of the game of Magic before you inevitably are going to lose, and that is you can have like someone like Reed Duke, etc., mulligans to 5 and draws only lands, that's the sort of nature of the game in which you can't really control. And the whole point of like deck building and playing tightly, etc., is to to me, the way I understand it is to, at the end of the day, like reduce the RNG, or the randomness of the game in your favor. But you can't always be like that. I mean, I think we were talking to, I think, Sean Goddard, or whoever we had on the podcast. I forget who we were talking about it with, that even if you're the best player in the world, the highest you can achieve is over thousands of games is a 70% win rate, even if you play really tight, because of the nature of the game, and we need to manage that, don't we?
Yeah,
I think so.
It's a very important and interesting topic to breach and talk about, because a lot of these kind of moments come from a variety of different players. Some players think they have everything collected, but then don't quite realize how abrasive they might be coming off because of a loss they took a little too hard, that they acted not quite right on, or even a win sometimes, and you just go a little over the top, and how that can fuel negativity into someone else's enjoyment of the game, or something else that's happening within their the realm of the scope of the game you just played. And it's these kind of different moments that you really need to take into account, not only for yourself, but also for the people that you're interacting with. Because at the end of the day, it's a social game, right? It's a game that you're playing at least with one other person, And it's really important how you take both your wins and your losses to understand how to appropriately act so everyone can get the enjoyment that they deserve out of an activity that at the end of the day is a hobby for most people that we're trying to have fun and enjoy. And this is one of the big things to talk about in Magic, because it doesn't always happen. You know, there's some notorious names sometimes of people that don't enjoy it, whether that's in your local community or in the greater scheme of things. And talking about these things is the only real way to try and get through them, try and understand how we can be better as a community, or how you can be better as an individual if you want to improve.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the key thing there is the perspective. I think that that you mentioned that that viewing it as a hobby that we're playing for fun, and I think there's actually a pretty strong argument that maintaining that perspective that it's a hobby and something I'm doing for fun. I think that actually, in the grand scheme of things, probably helps you play better a lot of the time as well. I think if it's like just doing life is easier when you're a bit more relaxed and a bit more calm about things, and maintaining that level of perspective. I think that helps if it becomes something where, I don't know, where your self-worth is dependent on your Magic results. Well, then it's going to be your self-worth is going to be all over the place because your results will be, because it's a game with high variance. And of course the other, Josh, you mentioned the types of inevitable losses that every Magic player experiences when you just get a really terrible draw. The other thing that can be every bit as hard to take is the types of losses when you basically punt a match by doing some horrendous misplay, and it's and Magic is a really, really difficult game. So even the best players in the world will sometimes do some horrific misplays, and how we process that is that can. I mean, I've definitely had some sleepless nights after just knowing that I've horrifically punted matches that I really cared about. I'm not sure I'm necessarily in a way I always wished that I could process them a little bit more easily and be a bit, that they wouldn't sort of sit with me so much. But I think it's a thing that every Magic player has to deal with in some way, and it is hard.
I still think about a loss I did. It'll be probably about 18 months ago now, where where I did something at the wrong time, and it's so obvious. Like I was in my head, I was like, I've won this game, but I just did it at the wrong order, very slightly, and I'm like, and the way I processed that personally was I just turned it into a funny story. So when we're like, having drinks with the team or whatever afterwards, I was like, guess what I did? And so annoyed. So simple, and yeah, it's things like that. Like it can cause you. Some people literally sleepless nights. I've heard stories of misplays, and people have actually made them physically sick. The thought of like, oh my god, I've done this. For example, we were talking about in the pre-brief the Hazaret play. Do you just want to talk through that, Nick?
But yeah, so it's just one of the most memorable moments I can think of from watching any tour coverage, where, if I remember rightly, it was a player called Yang Wen Chang he'd worked out the maths kind of brilliantly to a point where if he top decked the burn spell, he could then he then had this what had previously looked like a really improbable path to winning the game, and then he top decked the spell he needed, and kind of in the excitement, he went to the combat phase. Hazaret, you had to, I think it was one. You had to have one card or
one
card to be able to.
And he had two in hand.
Yeah, and he could have just played it before he went to the combat phase, but he didn't. And it was the most understandable mistake as well. If I don't know that too many players could, if they're really honest with themselves, be sure that they wouldn't have made that same mistake in that situation and in that sort of under that pressure. And it's a really hard thing to cope with, and it's in terms of ways of coping with these things, Josh. I think you actually mentioned. I mean, what you just described is, I think that's being able to laugh at yourself is actually a really healthy way of being able to cope with it. Actually, because if you're able to see the funny side of things, well, that's in the grand scheme. If over in the big picture, that's you're still taking it in and hopefully learning the lessons from it. But at least at least you're able to laugh at yourself rather than beat yourself up about it, and that's probably one of the things that helps you enjoy Magic in the gun, like overall, a lot.
I mean, you see it in a lot of these like I've got a military background and uniform services background, and that sort of world where you're expected to do hard, difficult things that could affect you mentally. Humor is one of the best ways as a coping strategy, and it's all relative. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to compare, misplaying at Magic to anything the sort of the military do or the emergency services do, but you can identify that in relative speaking, like something as traumatic as losing or punting a Pro Tour game of Magic to that person is quite a serious thing, and it's something that they probably can't get over quite easily. So yeah, humor is one of those things that you could use as a coping mechanism. But we're going to talk about, we'll move on to talk about, the other things behind Magic where you're winning in the game of Magic, even though you're probably not winning matches of Magic, if you know what I mean. Winning when you're not winning kind of thing. And before we move on to that, I just want to talk about something Luis said. So Luis said was about, the way you project onto your opponent, and I've got an instructional background, and something that we learned was I'm not sure if you want to call it a theory or a sociological study called Batari's box. And Batari's box is basically a cycle of my attitude will affect my behavior, and then my behavior will affect your attitude, and then your attitude will then affect your behavior. So if I'm being salty and mean and you're top decking, you're doing this, you're doing that, then that will then negatively affect the person you're talking with or your opponent with. But if you're like, if you listen to our episode, the $50,000 mindset with Young Dingo and Krista, there's a guy that we talk about. It was a hashtag Be More Me, and that guy was always, really, really upbeat and friendly, and like no matter what happened, he's so positive, and he's happy because he's playing the game of Magic. And you can't, if you're an opponent there, and you're whether you're winning or losing against him, you probably couldn't help but be having like a positive experience from being paired up with that person.
Exactly. And people have probably heard of the term as well, like self-fulfilling prophecy before, right? And this can become one of those things in a negative way or a positive way, depending how you interact with the world. If you choose to attack everything or be defensive against everything or trying, just see everything in a negative light, you're going to have negative things happen to you. It's a constant thing that happens. It's not new. It's something that you are making happen because of your attitude towards the world. Whereas if you choose to try and be positive and move things in a more just in a good way for yourself, you are more likely to have a good and positive experience. It's not something that's that out there. It's quite well known that what you do, how you view things, will affect the mood, the attitude, the behavior, everything around you. And I'm not saying you're never going to have a bad moment in your life if you're just positive at all times, but it's way less likely, and you're much more. You're going to see a lot more good in the things around you if you approach things in a positive, good way. And this is the kind of thing to keep in mind when interacting, not just with in Magic, but also everything that you're doing, because you're going to get a lot more your enjoyment out of your life that way, which keeps you in a positive mindset. Which, if you like Magic, will keep you winning. Will affect you in a much better way for that kind of thing.
I think it's important as well to keep that, even we're probably referencing and talking about potentially if you're losing at Magic and how to keep that mental sort of positivity going, but also when you're winning as well. Like being a horrible winner is something that isn't gonna just strive or do you well in the long run. Like it just isn't, is it?
Mm. This thing's always easier to say than actually do, but yeah. I think maintaining that sense of balance at both extremes is really key, isn't it? Because you can. I remember years ago, Jerry Thompson. He won the Pro Tour one day. The next stream he did with the same deck, he went 2 and 3 in an online draft, and and he was like, that kind of sums up the extremes of Magic, and and that kind of thing does happen. It's like if you have a really good day, it probably doesn't mean that you're like that you've just become the world's greatest Magic player. Also, if you have a bad day, you almost certainly haven't become the world's worst ever Magic player. It's, keeping that perspective again is so key.
Absolutely.
Do you think also that there's we model behavior to other people, whether we do it knowingly or not, and so when someone comes along to any tournament for the first time, they probably see how other people deal with different things, and people will always pick up stuff from other people, whether they mean to or not. And so there's kind of a responsibility on, especially the top players, to sort of set a good example, really, because people will copy them.
Absolutely. And, this copying behavior happens just naturally. It's something that, on in a subconscious level has a lot of interaction. If you see the best players in the world constantly whining, crying, and being jerks, then a lot of people are going to follow that example, and they're going to choose to be that way as well, just because it's just what happens. Whereas if they see that these top players are being positive, happy, happy-go-lucky kind of style people, that's much more likely to happen and keep everyone in a good spirit. So we have that responsibility as Magic players, not only in the top pros in the world, but also maybe you're the top player at your local FNM or your local community, and you might have more impact than you think. So having that kind of attitude of being positive, of being a good person, of showing that you can lose with respect and honor and just a good vibe, however you want to phrase it, can really go a long way.
Simon Nielsen said
the positivity there.
So Simon Nielsen said, you might not be having a good time, you're losing, but someone there, i.e. the opposite person of you, is it might be their first time winning a game of Magic or an FNM, might be the last game of an FNM, and it's the first time they've ever 3-0'd or 4-0'd an FNM, and they're going to have such an amazing time, an amazing feeling, and it's hard not to feel bad when someone's feeling so good. It's that social sort of game, and you might be losing, but someone's winning, and that's a good thing.
That consideration for your opponents and that empathy, I think that's really important, actually. And I was thinking about what you're saying about the positivity there, Luis, because I remember reading an article not too long ago about how people who are excessively positive tend to be a bit more depressed, and I thought that was really interesting. But I wasn't entirely surprised about that, because one of the things that in therapeutic training that you learn about is is to sort of avoid like what's often termed empty positivity, where where someone's really feeling really bad about something, and you go, oh no, you're really good at that thing, and if there's no evidence to support that view, then they're not going to believe it. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, you always have to look for evidence to support any kind of positive affirmation that you want to make, whether it's about yourself or someone else. And so that's a really important, that is, I think, quite a helpful way of staying, of being able to view things in a genuinely positive way, not in just everything's when it might not decide, really.
Because I'm not saying anyone needs to be, just outwardly overall super positive about everything that's happening to them. Sometimes things suck. But what you don't have to do is drag someone down. You can just be neutral. You can just be okay that things are not great, but don't wallow in it. Don't destroy everyone else's surrounding because of it. And that's positive enough for you to continue forward.
And so the key thing there is that's the consideration, isn't it, for the other for your opponent, sort of, and trying to, as it's not always easy to do, but enjoying their success where you can.
Exactly.
And also showing sympathy.
Oh, sorry guys, you're talking over each other there. One at a time. You first, Nick. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I think also showing a bit of compassion for people who have lost in some way that's difficult for them as well. There's the saying, isn't there, that the only thing worse than a bad loser is a bad winner. And I think that's also very true in Magic.
Absolutely. What were you going to say, Josh?
I was just saying it's using your past experiences to affirm, your losses or your wins or the way you're feeling. Like I might have done not well today, but I can come back. I know I can come back. I've just had a bad day and whatever. And I just want to talk about the whole. I mentioned before about winning without winning.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a person that a very good Magic player. We all know him here, called Rory, from Huddersfield. Very good. He always brings janky combo decks to wherever he does, and he just has the great time. And he's a very, very good and very, very good accomplished Magic player. But that guy, if he scrubs out of a tournament because he decided to bring, I don't know, ad nauseum tendrils to a legacy tournament, but likes playing mental cards and mental combo decks and 0-2s and says scrubs out. He's just there with his friends, has a few beers, and that guy is always smiling. You know what I mean? Like that, he's that guy. If that guy's at a Magic event, he is winning no matter what. He's either smashing the event, or he's in the pub, or he's having a big steak, or he's having a great time with his friends, and that's the kind of person I think of when I think about who I want to go and spend time with in Magic. And as an opponent, I'll see him and be like, I am in a hard time against this guy. But I'm so glad I'm facing him, because I'm just going to have, no matter the outcome, a really positive experience. And that to me, like someone like that is that meat from the meat man from what Dingo was talking about. Someone like that is going to make. It's going to make your experience, and that person is, no matter what happens, he has won that weekend. Like he is away, he's having a good time, he is embracing the gathering, and you don't sit over at him and think you're gonna have a good, you're gonna have an easy time, but you definitely know you're gonna have a good time.
And a big thing with all of this as well is not just when it comes to inside the game. You also have to keep in mind what you're doing outside the game for your own mental aspect. We mentioned earlier that, for example, the Chad's Magic team, what we're doing right now with all the practice, all the training, all that stuff, it can get overwhelming. So you have to be very careful with how you use your time. As anyone who has ever studied for anything in university or high school or whatever, you can have negative production if you don't use it appropriately. If you overdo something, you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to help yourself. You're going to affect your mental health really badly, and that's worse for you. So you have to learn how to not just do it in game when you're facing an opponent and that whole thing, but also outside of a game. How to appropriately use practice to practice in positive ways, to appropriately learn, and to keep a good spirit about whatever it is you're doing. I remember many times growing up with in high school in the States that sometimes people would just study to oblivion, and then they would be the most miserable people ever, and it was completely useless. They wouldn't remember anything because they were just miserable. So you have to be very careful with how you do things, why you're doing things, and the way that you approach it to really get the best out of it.
I think it comes from that whole
question.
Classic.
We keep doing this. We keep doing this every time I start. We're just cheering at the same.
Three people is a really awkward number in that sense, isn't it? Because it's sort of like that's just enough of a lag to not be quite sure if another person's talking too. I was just thinking of that question right at the start about the importance of mental health, and actually one of the really key things. When the more depressed you are, the less well your brain functions. Like your memory doesn't function as well. You don't think as clearly, and so in fact, if you want to play Magic well, looking after your mental health is really, really critical. And I also think it's so important to be really kind to yourself when you're not in such a good place mentally as well. And to use the sort of physical health analogy, you wouldn't expect like a runner to be able to run as well with a broken leg as if they're healthy. And in that same sort of way, if you're having a really rough time in life generally, don't be too hard on yourself if your Magic play isn't good, because in all probability it won't be.
Is there any sort of from a professional standpoint, is there any sort of things you can do focusing on the game of Magic, where if you are in that sort of space of depressed and you're not performing the best, you're going through the repetitions of playing Magic, but you're not actually progressing in any way? Is there any sort of things you can apply from a professional standpoint where you can bring to that sort of game to get the most out of your I guess you're testing or the grind or whatever.
Obviously, in a more general view, because I know it's hard to speak of specifics when you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Like generally, like things you could try and fix. Like a person could try to then say, "Oh, this works for me. This doesn't work for me," but they've tried it anyway.
Yeah. No. I think what you both touched on there is that these things are quite individual. So these are general ideas rather than I wouldn't want any listeners to take this as any specific instruction or anything. But one really common thing is that when people get more depressed, they enjoy things less than they would do normally. So that means that if you're normally enjoying Magic and then your mood's kind of has taken a massive dive, you probably won't enjoy Magic as much as you would the rest of the time. The problem is that then if you stop doing the things you enjoy, then you feel even worse. So it can be kind of a vicious cycle. So it's generally a good. I say this very cautiously because it depends on what's causing you to feel that way in the first place. But if you're usually enjoying Magic, it's probably a good idea to try and keep playing if it's something that you would usually enjoy. But just that self-care, that kind of kindness to yourself is really, really important. So if you find it hard to play as well as you would do otherwise, that's don't be too hard on yourself. And if for example you kind of really want to play a tournament, but then you don't really feel up to it on the day, again, don't be too hard on yourself. That's these things happen when you're in a really bad way.
So you say if it's important not to do not to stop something you enjoy, but also don't burn yourself out from the thing you enjoy, because it's that vicious cycle of if you stop what you enjoy because you're not enjoying it, then you're gonna sort of spiral down this sort of pathway, etc. So would you think it'd be reasonable then in that instance, then say if you're like the team now is really grinding modern art, modern up to Prague, they're really focusing on modern, I'm plateauing at modern. Do you think that would manifest in trying a different format or trying a different deck or something along those lines where you're still in the game, but you're trying something, maybe playing a game of Commander. Sorry, I nearly threw up then. Playing a game of Commander or playing something casual, party boxing it or something. I don't know. Like, would you say that was the sort of how that would manifest your advice?
So again, I can't overemphasize it. There are really no hard and fast rules on these things, but I think maybe if you can figure out sometimes kind of simplifying things and trying to figure out what is the thing that makes you enjoy, well, whether it's Magic or any other activity, what is it that actually makes it enjoyable for you at its core, and and maybe so maybe those things could all work. I mean, a lot of us have started playing Magic as a maybe like a very casual kitchen table game that's kind of fun, and then you're like, oh, what else? How good can I get at this? And you can almost kind of almost get into the bubble where you're really super focused on all the results without really being able to just enjoy the game. I mean, there's a musical equivalent, I guess, as well, where rather than just the enjoyment of writing and playing music, you can get super obsessed with like, oh, how many streams are my songs getting? How many people are coming to the gigs? You can get all sorts of super obsessed about the sort of
the stuff around it rather than the actual thing. Yeah.
Speaking of which, if you want to help us keep our mental mood up, just subscribe to the channel and give us a like. Just we're feeling a little depressed over here. It just helps us a little bit. Just saying.
Hey, feel free to go over to the Middle of Nowhere Spotify page while you're at it as well, if you want to subscribe to that too.
What a segue that was.
Just saying. Yeah,
absolutely. We've got a new album out on the 14th on Valentine's Day.
Oh, lovely.
But no, that makes a lot of sense. Something that I think about as well is something that helps me when I'm feeling low with Magic. Because sometimes you go into those stints where you just lose, and you're feeling a bit low. Sometimes it's best to try and approach the game in a different way. instead of going, to FNM or going to whatever with the mindset of I have to win FNM, otherwise my dreams are crushed. Maybe you go with let me go have fun with this deck. Let me go enjoy just a different aspect of Magic that I just know I like. One of my biggest things is I go and enjoy my Hollow One deck where I play Burning Inquiry and make Duffy cry. There's nothing quite like that feeling. Makes my opponent tilt. It's great, even though maybe it's a little bit. It is in all in good spirit of the game. Those kind of things are my things. Now Hollow One's a real actual good deck, so maybe I'll pick something else. But it's something that I always enjoyed doing when I was not having the greatest time in Magic. It just helped me reset, press that button of like I don't need to go and win. I can just go and have fun playing the game I love. Which some people might find useful in how they approach the game as well.
I think it's managing your expectations of what you want to achieve out the moment you're playing. So, for example, FNM is great. I'm here not to win FNM. I'm here to play this deck. Mm-hmm. And if you're there to play that deck, whether you 0-3 or 2-1 or whatever, or win the whole thing, it doesn't matter because you're there and you're achieving your goals straight away. So it's about setting the initial expectation of what you want to achieve out of this. If you go to like a mega modern action, or you go to a big tournament, an RC, etc., then you're there to win, aren't you? That's the whole point of your test, etc. But you also need to set your boundary in the fact that there's 1,200 people in this tournament. There's one winner. The odds are massively against you, so it's all about setting your expected boundaries, and then if you surpass those boundaries, then it's like that old saying, aim for the moon, and if you miss, you hit the stars, kind of thing. Whatever the saying is, you manage. There's my initial expectation, and if I surpass that, then I am no matter where I am now, I'm beyond my expectations, and I'm winning. Winning without winning. It's that sort of thing we're going for.
The coverage never really reflects the number of really good players there are in any big tournament who don't actually end up doing well. It's there's no shame in being one of those people who doesn't do well sometimes. And I wonder how much of the worst aspects of Magic actually might come from people putting so much pressure on themselves and having maybe unrealistic expectations as well about what's going to happen. I mean, cheating, for example. If people feel like they have some kind of divine right to always win, then I find it hard to sort of get into that mentality of people who go and cheat. But maybe that's a factor. Like I should win, so I have to make sure that I do that, that I win, even if it's by doing something really unfair.
It happens, yeah.
And also, and then also some of the really salty losing as well. It's So I do wonder if some of it is it can be like a defense mechanism of like I don't want to admit that I'm not a perfect Magic player, so I have to sort of come out with a barrage of essentially excuses for this loss, even though losing is a perfectly normal part of the game.
Yeah,
it's
people get defensive for no reason. They start talking about, I lost because this and this. I'm like, you just lost because you lost. Relax. You don't have to give me 1,001 reasons of why you lost. It happens. Just let it go and relax.
Interestingly, I think I play my best Magic when I'm okay with when I feel most okay about losing, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
It's almost like if I'm not, one of the other things that I compete in is tennis, and when I don't feel worried about losing, and that there in tennis I tend to play better as well. I think it's like if you can accept the outcome, whatever it is, and this is much easier said than done again. But if you're okay with the outcome, you can stay calm and focused a lot more easily. And in Magic, in sport too, but in Magic is that helps you make better decisions, I think.
A huge thing that people might have noticed, and maybe a bit anecdotally, but I think it happens to a lot of players, is when they go into a matchup that is really, really hard. Like you go into it and you're like, this matchup is so hard, I can't win it. And then your opponent is on, the other side and like, I can't lose this matchup. It's so easy. And then you go 2-0 and you beat them, or the opposite way around, right? Where you have the really good matchup and they have the really bad matchup, but then you lose 0-2 and you're like, what just happened? Sometimes because of that level of relaxedness that the other player has, like, it's a bad matchup. I'll play it, see what happens, just chill, have a good time. sometimes they beat you because of that. Because the other guy is like, ha, I don't care. This is so easy. I'm gonna win, and they don't pay attention. They don't respect anything. The other guy is, they're like, okay, I'm gonna lose. It's all right. I'll just have some fun. And then they win because they were playing appropriately, because they were so relaxed. It happens. It happens a lot. It's one of those things that I see very, very often, where someone goes into it thinking they're the top dog in this match because the matchup is so good for them, and then they lose because they're not being appropriate with a response of what should be happening. The other person's a lot more relaxed, and they're a lot more like, I can lose it, it's no problem. Whereas the other guy's like, oh, I have to win this. I'm gonna win this. It's easy. But they don't do it appropriately, and that happens. And it's a really interesting thing that happens quite a bit in Magic, I think. Which goes back to what you were saying about when you're most relaxed, you sometimes just play your best.
Well, those of you who like cats, my ginger cat Teddy has just come to join the podcast. What I was going to say was about that I think there's actually something about respecting your opponent probably helps you play better sometimes, because if you go into a match in a very kind of arrogant and entitled way, that's probably not going to bring out the best play. If you don't want to be taken, you never have, no player ever has a divine right to win any one match. You can always make mistakes, you can always get bad draws. That's Magic. And in a way, not it's, and I think it's kind of interesting that that's an area where doing probably the right thing in terms of creating a good environment for other people, it also kind of helps you actually play better in that situation, I think.
I think as well, like, that's a really interesting point, because you see a lot of times where someone's say like a female or someone from from however they identify, and they come play Magic in front of like an obviously male dominated game. Oftentimes that guy sits there and goes like, "Oh, it's only a girl. I'm gonna win this," or it's only a young person. I'm gonna win this game," and then they get absolutely trounced. And I think good on them, because never underestimate your opponent ever. Like, just don't ever underestimate your opponent, and always have that mutual respect, because you don't know what they're capable of. You don't know that you don't. You hear about like chess prodigies at the age of like 12. Taking down grandmasters and stuff, and you could be across the table from that prodigy, or just across the table from just a really accomplished good player, and you've just not take that time. You've not took that understanding or that moral courage, or that the emotional courage just to respect that person from the beginning, and then you pay the price for it, because you have this assumption on someone because of who they are. Like, you don't know that person. They could be absolutely. They have your cards set out. They could probably read your hand from your body language, and you haven't got a clue, because you've just not respected that person. And I think ultimately having that respect for your opponent is very, very important. And just before we move on, I just want to go back to something you said earlier, Nick, about your band and the sort of things that you said. You focus on the music aspect, but then there's that other spectrum of things that are focused around that band, whether it be ticket sales and all that. And one of the things that I use to cope when I'm feeling a bit burnt out by the game is I just go and play with my collection, or sort of trades out, or there's lots of other aspects of the game where you can focus on, whether it be shopping for some full art versions of cards, or just having a look through your collection, or just doing other things that is still the game and still your hobby you really enjoy, but isn't directly competing, or isn't directly burning yourself out on a competitive level. I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned that.
Something where existential philosophy again is really helpful, I think, is thinking about the choices that we have in our lives, rather than almost just blindly following a path that we're kind of already on. And we have some big choices to make in our lives when in Magic, in terms of how much we want to sacrifice in order to try and play the game more, or play us at a higher level, or there's now I don't think there's any sort of perfect way of doing it that works for everyone, but it's something that I think it's an important thing to think about, though. And I remember a few years ago listening to, I'm quite a big fan of the Jerry Thompson podcast, actually, and there was one episode, though, where they were talking about the sacrifices necessary to make it to the top in Magic. And the thing that I really disagreed with was that they were talking about these sacrifices exclusively as being a really good thing, that, you know, as if everyone should always sacrifice everything to get to the very top in Magic. And I think actually that's if you want to do that, you know, good luck to you. For most people, it's probably I would probably say it's in most people's interest not to sacrifice everything else in life to try and get to the very top in Magic. There's, you know, you're probably going to enjoy it more if you have other things in life that are generally going pretty well too. One of the things that is, I think, if you are aware that you're making this, if you're aware of these choices in life that you're making, then it's a bit easier to accept the outcome. If you've kind of, it's like you've knowingly consented to what you've decided, you know. So
yeah,
and that's, I mean, I think in Magic we have to get quite familiar with the idea of you know, trying to make the best decision available based on the information we have available at the time. You know, sometimes you can make what looks like a really good decision, and then the cards just kind of come up wrong, and it works out really badly. Sometimes you might make make a play that you really shouldn't be making, and it just plays out well. That happens, but there are comparable things that happen in life generally as well. And I think that's actually maybe an area where Magic can be quite a useful thing for learning about how to kind of get the most out of life generally. In that, if we can make key life decisions based on the information that we have at the time, and then accept those choices. You know, sometimes then something will happen that doesn't work out so well, but it's a bit easier to take if you can accept that. Well, I didn't know that was going to happen at the time I made the decision, and at the time it seemed like the right decision, so it's okay.
Absolutely, and that's informed decisions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Correct decisions can be not wrong. You know, me and Luis, before this pod, we were talking about a decision that Luis made in a game. We were watching back a game, and he made a decision. And when he explained like the decision why he did it, you know, it was a sort of, it wasn't a coin flip, but there was a right and wrong decision, and he chose correctly. But it turned out that if he actually did the opposite, it would have turned out much better for him. But you don't know that with the information that's there. You have to make the decision with the information you're there, and Magic is about information. You know, the most amount of information you can gain is going to give you the advantage. It just is.
Exactly. You know, it's one of those things like it's a 95-5, right? There's a 95% chance that this is going to happen, so this should be the decision, and a 5% chance that this happens, and this is the decision for that. You're usually correct to do the 95, but sometimes you get punished and the 5% happens. That doesn't mean you did the wrong thing. That just means that the wrong thing happened to you, unfortunately, but that's the game. It happens. You know, you take those risks. It's an informed decision of what you're doing, and you should be proud that you made the decision you made, even if you end up losing, because you did the right thing. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that's okay.
So to think of a sort of an outside Magic example of that, let's suppose you've got two tournaments going on the same day. One's in town A, one's in town B, and based on all the information available, the option in town, going to the tournament in town A, looks like the better option, and then you go there and for some reason, with hindsight, it would have been better to have gone to town B, but you couldn't possibly have known that. And there's all sorts of things that in life that happen that way.
Exactly. You know,
hindsight is 2020. Hindsight is 2020.
Always.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things that you have to come to learn to accept and how to move forward, right? Because one of the big things is it will only be as bad as it can be at that moment unless you choose to wallow it and let it get worse. If you keep moving forward, if you keep deciding to make that proactive action with your life, with whatever it is you're doing, whether it's in Magic, whether it's in real life, whether, you know, whatever it is that you do, the best way to keep things from taking the biggest toll on you is to keep moving forward. You know, and just try and put some of that value into yourself, because you deserve it. You're a good person who deserves to have the best things happen to you. So do the best job you can at making that happen.
You know, you make wrong decisions, you make misplays, you know, you lose games of Magic, but that's where the learning comes from. That's the learning space. You learn much more from making wrong decisions and understanding why, and losing games and understanding why, than what you do by just winning. You know, you 2-0 clean sweep an opponent, you know, draw the absolute nuts. very little learning is going to be gained from that. And there's wins and losses.
Yeah, sometimes you do really well in a tournament, and then you decide to ID at the very end, and you get ninth. And it's just one of those things that happens, right, Josh?
Cheers, Luis. Yeah, that does happen. That does happen. Yeah. That does happen. Especially when you're in a tournament with your favorite podcasters and content creators, and you're like, damn.
Yeah, you only travel a few thousand miles to another continent, and it happens. It happens.
I just ID into ninth, yeah.
Yeah, it's classic.
Happened in the challenge the other day, actually. Ninth. Brilliant.
At least you did an ID for that one.
And so many of the most popular stories and and films involve something going horribly wrong, and then the main protagonist kind of coming, fighting back from something going wrong. So I'm just thinking that's certainly a way of viewing the defeats in the overall narrative as maybe not being such a bad thing. Because I mean, in Game of Thrones, all of the top characters went through absolutely awful stuff, which helped them acquire new powers and skills, and that's the magic equivalent there. Maybe I suppose just the things that we learn from the defeats. If those things, if we can learn from them and they help us become better players and maybe better people in some ways as well, then the defeats can definitely be a big positive in the big picture.
Yeah, and I've found this conversation really interesting, actually. It's almost we're talking almost like the Zen side of magic in terms of how to be sort of control oneself and understand oneself and get the best out of yourself. It's all about this is what you should do, this is what you can do, and this is what it is. But if you don't have a fundamental understanding of yourself as a player and yourself as what you're trying to achieve in that, and have a real grasp of that, then you're gonna. I'd struggle to suggest how you would become the sort of top of your game in your capabilities anyway, or in your you said about not giving up. People sacrificing to play Magic, and I do think that there is a level of sacrifice. But if you're only willing to sacrifice so much, then how do you maximize that sacrifice? I mean, I know people sort of like Max Dortion, a lot of legacy podcasters I follow, there's not podcasters, players that I follow. They've all got wives and kids and a whole spectrum of things going on in their life that you probably couldn't sacrifice. There's no reasonable way you could sacrifice time with your children. Well, obviously there's time you can sacrifice, but reasonable time to sacrifice with your children for essentially a game of Magic. And there's going to be a limit of what you can actually sacrifice. But if you can't sacrifice that much time or can sacrifice that much stuff, as someone who's in the 20s can, who's just in uni or whatever, you've got to maximize your time and be efficient with that time. And if you understand yourself as a player, that is efficiently using your energy into something, I guess, into something positive within your performance.
I would argue that you could sacrifice all of those things. It would just be very unwise to choose to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's one of those things, right? Because Magic already takes monetary sacrifice when you're competing a lot, right? Whether that's the actual payment of the tournaments, the payment of the cards, the payment of the travel, whatever it is you're doing for that. But for people that do it reasonably, it's a known sacrifice of that, of what you're doing with your money or your time or whatever it is that you're doing with that. And if you want to go deeper into those levels, you can sacrifice certain things. It's just not always the best thing to do for yourself. And that's when you have to analyze your life, analyze what you're doing. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? What does it mean? What will you gain? What do you have to lose from doing these kind of things? And, like Nick was saying, you could sacrifice all your time with your wife, kids, and children and all that, and then you could sell your house to buy more Magic cards. Don't recommend it. Not a very good choice, generally speaking. Or you could just make a reasonable assumption of, what, maybe I can sacrifice this time here, but make it up in this other area, and that's okay because it works out for me because I'll get enjoyment here, but I'll be able to give extra time, more fun, more whatever to my other aspects of life in this area. And making those switches, those sacrifices that way might be a more reasonable way than, becoming homeless to get a bunch of cardboard. Just those kind of things are things to keep in mind.
The game is a privilege, right? It is a privilege to play Magic, and it's a really, not many people are in a position to invest so much time, effort, and money into this game. But guess what? Also having a loving person in your life is a privilege. Having kids, in my opinion, is a privilege. There's lots of privileges in life that people just take for granted because it's part of their everyday life, and they don't understand the sort of context of that within the world. You got to see your privileges, and you got to think, I'm quite lucky to be in this situation. I'm already winning just attending this tournament, just attending MagicCon, just attending, wherever it is you go, and with the cards that I'm privileged to own, and it's sort of realizing that and being okay with that, and then focusing your goals with that in mind.
And Louise, you meant you kind of said this as a joke about the way that that you could kind of just sacrifice your house and everything. I think it's interesting though that it's like it can become it's when it goes from being a fun hobby into a much less healthy total obsession, and that is a thing that can happen. And I think having fewer positive things going on in life outside Magic probably makes us more at risk of getting super obsessed with Magic. I was probably the time when I was possibly most obsessed with Magic of all was maybe a time when I had just been made redundant, and I was having a pretty rough time trying to find a job that I liked at that point, and Magic was a thing that I was able to get super absorbed in, and maybe during that time I maybe got a little too absorbed in it at times. It's only the defeats during that part of my life were harder to deal with than at others, because I guess I lost that bit of balance and perspective that is so important for keeping everything in check, and I can see how without if you're going for a long period of time without those other things in life, whether it's family, girlfriend, boyfriend, or pets, what you're doing in your day job, other hobbies, that can be another thing that can make a big difference. I think. I mean, without those, if you only have Magic in your life, that's a lot of pressure on Magic on this game that is super random, where you're going to probably make a bunch of horrible mistakes sometimes. I mean, in fact, sorry, I sort of just touched on something there, but something that I was found helped a little bit was to not to have Magic as my only hobby ever. So that if I did have a really bad run of results in Magic or something, well, maybe I'm still enjoying playing tennis. Maybe I'm still, maybe things are going well on the musical front. Maybe my working days are still going well. If everything's going badly, that's much harder. But if Magic's one of several things, I think it's a little bit easier to take the downs a bit more easily. I suppose if perhaps there's a bit of a flip side there, in that if you're doing a bunch of other things, you have less time to dedicate to Magic. So maybe maybe I would have been a better player if I hadn't have also enjoyed playing tennis, for example. I don't know.
You heard it here first, guys. Make sure that you invest into the Pokemon TCG, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Flesh and Blood if you want to have a healthy lifestyle.
Hey, I recommend Pokemon. I've just got into Pokemon. I recommend it. It's all right. It's not bad. It's very cheap.
I actually came third in the 2006 national championships in the card game.
What, in Pokemon?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Nice.
I know, guys, it's been very serious, the topic we've been speaking of, everything that's going on. But I also hope that you've enjoyed the discussion we've had. There's a lot of interesting things of how to approach the game, how it can matter to you, how it can be different for some than to others, and how you should really grasp everything that's in front of you so you can make the most of it. And we don't want this to all be a doom gloom and you have to change your entire lifestyle and do this. No, it's just a introspective of Magic players.
I don't think this was a doom and gloom. I think this was actually quite constructive. I think this was quite positive. I think this was actually really good because it's we're sort of what I think what basically what we're saying is understanding your relationship with the game and how you can how can you constructively get the most out of it or get your goals out of it. That's what I think. I think it's really good. It's really interesting.
I think it's a really good mental health episode.
Is there anything you want to add, any of you two, before you sort of move on to sort of like the lighthearted stuff, or to finish up anyway?
Well, I was just thinking actually an analogy there is again throwing another bit of existential philosophy into the mix here. But there's existentialism can sound really bleak to some people because it sort of deals with looking at life's boundaries like death and and the different things that we can't do. But then there's also the flip side is that by being aware of life's boundaries, it empowers us to kind of make the most of the time that we of what we do have available and make better choices, make more informed choices, and kind of live hopefully a more fulfilling life as a result. I think there's an element of that. I think we've applied an element of that to our relationships with Magic here. That by being aware of the things that can go wrong, hopefully we can make better choices and have and get more out of our games and life generally.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, I want to know, your lads, what you want to get out of 2025. What is your New Year goal for 2025? I don't know who wants to go first. I mean, Luis, I don't know if you want to pick first, but let's keep it maybe. Let's keep it maybe Magic focused.
Okay. So I was gonna say 6-pack abs, a Ferrari, and but yeah, no. I
said 2025, Luis, not 2027.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. My goal, I really want to be, my high peak goal right now for Magic at least is I want to qualify to the Pro Tour. That's my goal. In 2025, if that's what I want to try and achieve, if I can, I want to qualify into the Pro Tour. Hopefully attend it, if all goes well. And that's my Magic goal for this year. I'm really, looking forward to it. I've been doing a lot of work with the team, and that's what I want to achieve. I think I can do it if I put my effort and everything that I want forward. I think I can do it, and that's my goal. Nice.
I think mine. I know it's like lower to the ground than yours, the Pro Tour thing, but I'm just managing my goals here. But I actually really want to really want to top a Mega Modern or a Mega thing from Axion. I just really want to do it. I just want to do it. Like, I've won an Axion tournament in the past. I've done really well at those events. But when it comes to the Mega stuff, like, it just seems to be like I either mess up somewhere or I do just above average or something, and then the other sort of events around it, I tend to do really well. I want to top 8 at Mega Modern. I want to be, because it's the premier UK tournament series, really, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I want to be up there.
Closest we have to the Star City series in America, isn't it? Really?
Yes. Absolutely. The Spotlight series now, they call it.
Do you have any 2025 Magic goals, Nick, or if not, a generalistic goal?
Well, one of the reasons that I haven't been playing Magic so much since the pandemic is that my band reformed during the pandemic, and that's the closest thing to an all-consuming hobby that I have at the moment, actually. So, Magic-wise, I plan to just sort of play it fairly casually on Arena for fun, and and maybe play a few events with. It depends for me these days. It depends more on who that involves hanging out with. If there's people I want to spend time with, and the best way to do that is playing some Magic, then I'm up for that. But I don't know. Maybe at some point the fire will come back and I'll want to play it more. Maybe it won't, and I'm okay with either at the moment. I'm just gonna kind of see how it all goes, I suppose.
I like that answer.
But I have got the my band has the album coming out on the.
That's right, yeah.
On Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day, so 14th of Feb. Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. I mean, we'll link all your bands. So we already have it linked anyway. Your Spotify, every episode that we post. But if there's a specific sort of albums, I guess shop location or whatever you want to link us, I'm sure you can provide that, and we'll link it. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So as things stand, well, we've got So from our social media, which is at Midland Railway Band on Facebook and Instagram, and from there there's links to the Linktree page, which has links to absolutely everything. So you can find our music on basically whatever your preferred listening platform is, and we've got some videos up there as well. So and that's also, you can also see where we're playing. It's most of our upcoming gigs right now are around the Manchester area, but hopefully we're going to be travelling a bit further afield later in the year. So that's all going to be quite exciting, I think.
Can I just say, when you came, you actually came up to my hometown where I live at the moment in Whitehaven, and that gig you did was honestly so much fun. Like your band has such a stage presence. Like it's just you just demand the audience. You're like audience, come here now, and you just I don't know. Your music is just really. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just really fun.
I mean, actually, should I talk a bit about the song that is your theme tune now?
Yes.
Because that was that's a song called "She Loves Ted Bundy," and it's all about well, it was inspired by my girlfriend Lizzie's serial killer obsession, where she loves serial killer documentaries and finds them very calming and we'll sort of put them on to help her fall asleep. And her favourite serial killer is Ted Bundy. And it just started out with a bit of sort of banter about how much she loves Ted Bundy and how I'm going to write a song about that. And then it turned into a proper song. And then at first she was like, "Don't tell anyone this song's about me. It makes me sound crazy." But she loves the song now. And it's sort of it seems like it kind of tapped into something, because there's a lot of most all girls who just really find serial killers totally fascinating. And,
my girlfriend does too, 100%.
Yep. Shout out Ellie, who loves a serial killer documentary, or Netflix is really full of them at the moment.
Yep. Serial killers, murder mystery investigations, missing persons, all that stuff.
It's a funny story, Luis, and you'll probably be like, "This is totally a Josh thing." I was watching a murder mystery documentary and got really frustrated when they didn't tell me the ending. And she was like, "It's murder mystery.
You're a genius, Josh.
You're not supposed to find out."
You're
and I was
genius.
like, "How do they not find? I've just invested an hour into this documentary. I didn't find out anything at the end." And I got really frustrated.
Unsolved cases. Why didn't they tell me what happened?
Now I'm like, I need to Google this. I need to Google everything about it to try and solve it myself.
Like, it always bugged me in the Blair Witch Project that we never really got to see what was doing it all. I was like, that's disappointing.
Gosh.
Yeah, that sort of stuff just does my head in. Like, I need to know. I have to know. I'm the kind of person who will be like halfway through a film, and I'll read the synopsis, the plot. I'll read the cast biographies, and I'll totally go on an obsession. Googling everything about the band, about the film, about the series, whatever I'm watching. I'm terrible for spoilers. Like I will at the moment, and don't judge me on this, by the way, but I'm halfway through Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey slaps, by the way. If you've ever watched Downton Abbey, it absolutely slaps. And I already, like, before even I got to it, like I've spoiled who dies, I've spoiled who gets married, I've spoiled, what happens to the different things in the series, and I'm like, I've spoiled it for myself, and I just continue. I'll never learn from it. I just have to know like everything about something. Like I don't know why.
I know that
why
feeling.
I
I do that towards the end of movies. Like I look up everything to make sure I got every single little tidbit. But something I know I'm bad for is in the middle of shows, I'll call what's going to happen next, even though I technically don't know, but I kind of know just because you kind of figure it out watching shows. And Helena, she's not so good at it. She hates it because I always call it out. She's like, "You're ruining everything," and I know that feeling. I know it.
She'll see me on my phone, Ellie, and she'll be like, "Are you Googling this film?" No. Yes.
I find it so interesting how different personality traits sort of that help in the world of magic, how they sort of manifest themselves in other areas of life, and certainly magic does reward being able to get super obsessed with magic, doesn't it? And it's kind of, it's possibly not a coincidence that when you're that with both of you, when you're watching films, you're like getting totally obsessed with it and need to know everything about it and almost like solve every aspect of it. I suspect that's not a coincidence.
I think with series of it's pattern recognition too.
Yeah.
It's like how you get good at magic through reps is recognizing the patterns of decks, recognizing the play patterns of certain archetypes, and then that's how you then learn to then defeat them. That's why Christian's a good example. Like if he's never seen a deck before, he'll lose to it 100%. But the moment he's got reps against it, he'll never lose to it because he just knows, like, he learns the patterns of that deck. But yeah, it's very interesting. People are interested, right? Like, Magic as a social hobby is very interesting. People are interested. Yeah, it's just really.
It's a great time. It's a great time.
It's cool.
That's one of the reasons that I enjoy my day job, actually, because yeah, I guess I do have that sort of fundamental interest in people and general, and it kind of made me realize that I view people much more positively than I ever thought I did, actually.
I can understand that.
Yeah. So I'm happy, boys. Have you got anything more to add?
No, I think we spoke about just about everything we could in this time slot of period, because I know it's a very deep subject, so there's lots more to be said. But I'm pretty happy with it.
Nick,
it's always possible to go into more depth. It's been really fun.
No,
I'd like to thank you, Nick, for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. We've been friends for probably over nearly a decade now, potentially. When did I start playing Magic? When did Eldritch Moon come out? Because I first met you during Eldritch Moon. And I remember my first Magic card I ever pulled was a Nahiri. What's it? I don't know what the Planeswalker's called, but that was my first Magic booster I ever opened, and there was a Nahiri in there. And I remember you coming up to me and you were like, "Oh, is that for trade?" And I was like, "What is trading, and why have you come up to me, stranger?"
Was that the red-white Nahiri?
The Harbinger.
Yeah. I forget. Harbinger, yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah,
and good old days. I've known Nick for 5-6 years now as well. I met him in 2018, 2019.
I think that was 2016, that one, Josh. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I remember there was a
2016.
There was a GP in Manchester around that time. So that's sort of part of the timeline I'm using. May possibly have been 2015, but I think So even so, we're talking 9 years or so.
The better part of a decade.
Old school Fanboy 3 in the sweaty room at the back with the absolute swamp toilet.
Oh, funny story about that, actually. I the match, the time that I was one win from the Pro Tour, that was actually at an RPTQ in Fanboy, and it was in August, I think. And I was like, oh, it's going to be ridiculously hot in there. So I turned up in shorts and a t-shirt, and then and it's full of people. I turned up and everyone there's got like big coats on, and I was like. And I was thinking, I wonder how much that helped. That I was prepared for that climate, and the others there that day weren't.
Well, we spoke about the past tournament shift, haven't we, Luis? Where prepare for your tournament, make sure you're hydrated, all that good stuff. We've talked about that in the previous podcast, so go check that out. But yeah, cheers, boys. Thank you for that. I hope you have a good 2025. I mean, it was only 2 days into it on the record of this, but I hope it's off to a good one. I really enjoyed this podcast, and
absolutely,
yeah.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell everybody, your grandmother, Nick's grandmother, tell them all.
Abuela.
And subscribe to Midnight as well, and see what you think of the rest of the song that isn't in the intro and outro of this podcast.
Yeah, give it a good listen. Take care, everybody.
Definitely worth it. And if you can, attend one of these shows.
Yes, absolutely. We'll put all the details there. Thank you, everybody. You have a great 2020-2025. Happy New Year and all that jazz. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.